everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Oh Shoot. I'm your host, Cassidy Lynne, and this is my official welcome back to the podcast. So I've been gone for about a month, and this is my first official podcast back from Italy, and we've got so much to talk about. As you guys know, I love to just fill you in on every single little detail on my life. So this episode is no exception. However, I am going to tell you guys, if you're one of those people that are like, Cassidy, I don't really care that much about your life, get to the point. This is an educational episode. So the main thing I want to talk about today is planning an international workshop and honestly just like planning an international trip as well. So we're going to be talking about all the things with my workshop, what the setup was like, the pros and cons, how did we get everything there, what did the planning process look like, what did the shoots look like, how did I create the schedule, what kind of help did you have? I'm literally going through and reading all of the topics that I'm going to talk about. Booking vendors, selling tickets, pros and cons, like I said, language differences, all the things. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So buckle in. I hope you're excited. A couple things before we even get into Italy. These are like current things happening as of today. So I'm recording this the day that Taylor Swift just announced that she has a new album coming out. The Life of a Showgirl, I think is what it's called. The podcast episode hasn't come out yet. Like just the teaser came out when I'm recording this. So we are excited. I'm sure by the time that this episode comes out, that'll be the talk of the town. So just adding that little tidbit in there, just know your girl is excited. Other little update as of currently, I am watching The Summer I Turned Pretty, as is the rest of the world. Just Conrad. Just Conrad. Forget Belly. Forget Jeremiah. Just Conrad. It is such a good summertime show. I literally love the vibes of the show. I love like the film style, all of that. So yes, very, very into that show. It actually reminds me, I watched like The Sound of Music for the first time ever on my flight to, where was I going to? I think it was to St. Lucia. First time ever watching Sound of Music. I loved the filming style in that. My dad told me that it won like a bunch of like awards and whatever, but like truly the filming style and The Sound of Music is beautiful. I feel like I could base my entire photography off of that. Just a little side note. What was the other thing I wanted to talk about? Oh, we have our investment property that we're currently working on. As of this episode, we have been kicking it into high gear. So I feel like the last episode that Charlie was on, which was a while ago, he was mentioning working at the property, whatever. We finally got out of like the demo phase, and now we're in the finishing touches phase of sanding and finishing the floors, finally getting all the drywall done. So yeah, it's looking so promising over there. It's already made such a huge difference. So, I like to showcase that stuff on my Instagram stories, and I think I'm going to keep it in like a little highlight on my Instagram profile. So, okay, let's get into Italy, shall we? So as you guys know, and if you don't, that's okay. I'm going to tell you anyway. I went to Italy half for a personal trip and half for a photography workshop that I hosted. So we started off our trip in Venice. So we flew from Grand Rapids, Michigan to Philly, and then from Philly to Venice. And one of my tips for international travel that I've learned is if you can avoid having a layover somewhere that is international, instead like having a layover within the US, it makes it easier for like the customs process. Then you don't have to go through customs like twice. But it's not always the case. I understand that sometimes the cheaper flights are with like a layover in Amsterdam or whatever. So I get that. But in this case, the price really was not much different to layover in Philly. So That was like through American Airlines, which is like my number one. I'm like platinum status with them, so I try to fly with them as much as I can. So that was really nice. I bought all the tickets through American's website. So yeah, racked up so many points with this trip, and I used my American card too. Which travel credit cards is a whole other topic. I have mentioned it briefly. I currently also have a Southwest card, but I think I'm going to cancel it because I literally never fly Southwest. And I'm thinking about getting a Venture One card potentially. We'll see. So anyway, back to the trip. We started in Venice, and basically we flew into Venice because it was the closest, cheapest option to where the villa was, which the villa was in Verona. But the Verona airport itself is like a smaller-ish airport. So like you wouldn't be able to fly Philly to Verona. You'd have to fly like Philly to Milan and then Milan to Verona or something like that. So between Venice and Milan was the other closest option. We ended up choosing Venice, which I was like, cool, I've never been to Venice. So we flew into Venice, and we basically got there at like 11 a.m. or something like that, and then spent like the rest of the day. And then the next day was my birthday, so we spent that whole day in Venice literally just doing the touristy things, wearing cute outfits, eating cute food, all the things. And then the day after that, we left and started our drive to Verona. We rented 2 really big cars for all the luggage and all the people that came. So that's something that I'm going to talk about in a minute, is how we got everything there. But just know we had 2, and I say big cars. For the US, they're not big cars. They were like the same size as like a Honda CRV. But for Italy and for Europe, it is a big car. Like that's like the biggest car you can find. So we rented 2 big cars. We actually ended up leaving the cars at a parking garage outside of Venice because I didn't realize that you couldn't bring cars into Venice. Like I just didn't know that like you literally can't drive around Venice. You only get around via boat. I had no idea. But I had already rented the cars, and I figured that out a couple months before. So I ended up just putting the cars at this like parking garage outside of Venice, and they were only there for like 2 days. So it wasn't a big deal. So then once our time in Venice was up, we drove. It was about an hour and a half from Venice to where the villa was. I say that the villa was in Verona, but actually was about 25 minutes outside of Verona. Honestly, like true Italian countryside. It was very just like middle of nowhere vibes. And we were at the villa for 7 days. So Saturday to Saturday. I had no choice. This was the minimum stay option. It was really nice because my workshop obviously wasn't 7 days. So we were able to be at the villa. I think, let's see, 1, 2, we were there like 3 nights before everyone got there. So it was nice because I was able to scout the locations and figure out like room assignments and like, turn on all the air conditioning in all the rooms and all that stuff. So it definitely was nice that we got there early. And I was even able to like message all of my attendees and let them know like, like the villa owner, when we got there, she told us that, it's really hard to get an Uber out here. So I sent everyone a message, was like, hey, it's really hard to get Ubers. Here's her recommendation for like how to get to and from the villa. So, anywho, the attendees came on Tuesday and they left on a Friday. That was intentional because I wanted that last day at the villa, just to like rest and relax after spending 3 days hosting a workshop. I just knew that it was going to be so much if we didn't have that last day to like reset. If we flew out on Friday with everyone else, it probably would have been horrible. So yeah, we rested on Friday and then we flew home on Saturday. So let's get into some of the topics about the workshop. The first question I want to address is how did we get everything there? So I don't know if you guys saw the workshop, but it was multiple, it was 5 different shoots, multiple looks and outfits and all the things. So my plan was to find a lot of things that we needed there in Italy. And not like a last minute, oh, let me find a makeup artist the day before. It was more so like, I'm just finding everything there. I'm finding my makeup artist and booking them, 5 months in advance. But they're going to be from or around the Verona area. I'm not going to like fly someone in that I know. So for example, the hair, the makeup, the models, the horses, all those things. Those were all, if you will, locally sourced. Small business shop local. I did bring over a couple of items. So that's kind of like the hard part of it was I would have loved to have had a couple brands that were willing to like give me like items and products, but I quite literally couldn't fly them over, and like the shipping process is just like a mess over there, so you really can't like ship anything there either. So I brought over with me 5 different wedding dresses. So I only needed 4 of them. Yeah, I only needed 4, but my wedding dress vendor sent me an extra dress, so I just was like, I'm gonna bring this just in case. And then I also brought the wardrobe for most of the guys, with the exception of, I think 2.5 of the guys had their stuff. So 2.5 of my guy models had their own clothes. 2 of the guys had their own full suits, which is so nice. One of the models, the guys had his own like pants, but I brought a shirt, and then I brought like a full outfit for one of the guys. So how did I get everything over there? I put all of those wedding dresses in carry-ons. I vacuum sealed everything. I got these little like travel vacuum seal bags, and I put those bad boys in the vacuum seal bag and sucked them up, and it did pretty well. Like it made them like, there's just so much material with wedding dresses, so it really shrunk them down quite a bit. So we had one carry-on that was just full of wedding dresses, and I think I had to put like one extra dress in like our other carry-on. And then I also packed and brought with us from home all of the totes that the attendees got. So there's actually one right here. Let me grab it real quick. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see. If you're not, then you won't be able to see. But I got these red totes for all the attendees. They're super cute. I say red, but they're like they're canvas totes with like red writing. So I designed those before and got them all ready to go, put them in a carry-on. That took up a big chunk of one of our carry-on spaces for sure. I also packed with me a couple stickers that I designed for like each attendee to get a sticker. I packed some merch that I was selling. I got some gift cards from Camrat, which is super nice. And then I also brought with me like a travel steamer. This is something I just found on Amazon, but it was like saved the day, you guys, because I didn't want to assume that the villa had a steamer. I actually asked them beforehand, and they said that they just had like a really nice iron. So brought my own steamer, and then I also brought my Super 8 for a prop. So that's basically everything for the workshop that I brought with me. So the wedding dresses, some of the stuff for like the attendee bags, the steamer, gift cards, merch, and then the Super 8. And like wardrobe, whatever. Everything else was stuff that I found there. I did bring 2 pairs of shoes for wardrobe as well. Everyone else basically had their own shoes, but I had 2 pairs of shoes that I brought for one of the shoots. And then what did we get when we got there? Okay. So, a lot of what I put in the totes were just things that I got at like the grocery store. So candy, food, water bottles, whatever. The tote bags weren't anything crazy. Like it wasn't filled with like $1 million. It was just like stuff that I thought would be nice if someone was like hungry and like didn't want to like go to the kitchen for a snack. They like have their own little supply in their room. Other things I got there, a lot of the props for the shoots I actually got there. So one of my shoots was a picnic where like the couple was like outside in the grass, and literally everything in that picnic I got at the villa. So there was like a blanket from the villa. I got like a tea set, like a little tea pot and like cute cups with like little plates. I got like this tray, this really cute tray that they had there. A bunch of fruit we already had. Like I said, I brought the Super 8 for that. Like other random little things, literally like books. I put a bunch of books for the picnic. It all was just like from the villa, which was really nice. Okay, so let's talk about the planning process a little bit. A question that I get asked all the time is like, how far in advance did I actually start planning this workshop? So I'll give you guys just like a brief timeline on all the things. So I actually booked the villa in November of 2024. So that was when I was cooking on this idea. Oh, I think I might want to do a workshop. And I just booked the villa. That for me was like the thing. Like, this is solidifying. I am doing this. I also got a little nervous because the villa only had like a couple of weeks left, like open in their calendar. So I was like, oh, I need to really get in on this. So I booked the villa in November 2024. I started to sell tickets in January 2025. I really had nothing planned at that point other than the villa. I felt like the villa was my selling point. I also, I've never done a workshop like this before, so I didn't have any photos to show of like previous stuff I've planned or anything like that. So it just kind of was what it was. So I sold tickets January 2025. At that point, once I saw the status of, okay, all my tickets are sold out, I think we can do this. Then I started booking all of my vendors. And that was in February of 2025. So basically I booked everything about 6 months in advance to plan everything. 4 to 6 months is how long it took me to plan. That's how far in advance everything was booked. So booking the vendors and everything, that was something I did basically right away after I sold all of my tickets. So once I sold my tickets, that's when it kind of kicked into high gear. Like, okay, this is happening. You sold out. You have 16 people coming. Let's make this amazing. So another question I want to answer is, did I scout the location beforehand or did I plan remotely? So the answer to this, the short answer is I planned everything remotely. I have never been to Verona. I had never been to the villa. I basically based my entire workshop on this villa. I didn't go to see it beforehand or anything like that. However, I'm not an idiot. I needed so much detail, so many photos, so many videos of the villa before booking it. So thankfully this villa, when it was listed, it had just so many photos and videos of every single room. They had a whole freaking like blueprint layout of the place, like a map of the place. All the amenities were listed. Every single room had AC. Every single room had a bathroom. Every single room had essentially bigger than a queen size bed. Some of them were kings. I think some of them were a little smaller than queens. A little smaller than kings, but bigger than queens. That's a hard sentence. So I asked a lot of questions to the villa owner before booking it. I just was like, if I'm planning this and like people are depending on this workshop to be amazing because I promised it would be amazing, I need the place that I book this to be simply incredible. And a big reason I booked this villa was because of like the gardens as well. It was just like such a big thing for me were those gardens, and it was exactly what I pictured and more, which was amazing. So everything was planned remotely, but because of their super in-depth pictures and video walkthroughs of the villa, I felt very okay booking the place beforehand. And based on the reviews too, it had just like great reviews and everything too. Okay, so now let's get into talking about the shoots a little bit, which I personally love talking about the shoots because I plan them. So I thought they were amazing. So the first thing I want to talk about is how many shoots there were and what was like the workshop setup. So essentially we had 5 shoots in total. We had 3 bridal couples. And then we had 1 just regular couple. I wrote down one normal couple and then one solo bride. So my thought process in planning this was I wanted to have bridal sessions because I think if you're in this like international destination place, most likely you're going to try to be booking destination weddings from this. So I wanted to give them and my attendees plenty of like wedding content. I know for me, the wedding content is what I love and that's what I want. So I'm assuming everyone wants that as well. I also did 2 guided shoots. So of my 5 shoots in total, 2 of them were guided by different educators. So one of my bridal couples in like the Villa Gardens was a guided shoot by Lily Red. And then the solo bride was guided by Preston Luke. So those are kind of like just more educational things. And then I also had 2 speaking sessions where I sat down with the attendees and we talked and, whatever. So how did the shooting work and how are the shoots set up? So I tried to to split up. Okay. Me trying not to be an explicit podcast and cussing by accident. I tried to split up the shooting groups because we had 16 photographers total, which is just a lot of people. I think one of my biggest fears in planning this workshop was that it was going to feel like there were way too many photographers. And I personally know the feeling of trying to shoot with a bajillion photographers present. I went to a workshop when I was first starting out in photography where there were like 20 people in my shooting group and it was awful. So I just didn't want it to be like that. So we had 16 photographers. One of the days we actually had 18 people because I sold a couple of day passes, but we basically always split up the groups. We did rotations for the different shoots. So with the 16 people, we did 2 groups of 8 and then we had rotation. So you would get like 30 minutes with the couple and then you would either take a break or you would go to the other shoot that was going on at the same time. There were timer assistants at each shoot just to help keep everyone on time and make sure that, everything was fair and all the things. So with each shoot, we had group posing time and then we had individual posing time, which is important to note because I think with workshops, sometimes you get put in a group with someone that, I don't know, just like is very outspoken and kind of dominates the group posing time, which sometimes that's really nice if you're just starting out and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. Can someone jump in and pose and I can kind of observe? That's always so nice. However, if you're someone that has a specific vision, but let's say you're a little bit more quiet or, you just don't feel comfortable speaking up over top of everyone to get your pose in, I wanted to make sure that everyone had individual posing time as well. Specifically for our first shoots, it was really important to me that each group had group posing time to start and then individual posing time because we, like the attendees aren't familiar with each other yet. They don't know each other. They're not super comfortable with each other. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone felt comfortable. So that was kind of the shoot setup. Typically we did around like 10 to 15 minutes of group posing and then each person got like 3 minutes to pose individually and get like their main shot. And then all the other photographers could kind of like shoot at the same time, but they couldn't be like, oh, look at my camera or look over here. Like it was that photographer that was posing and directing was getting the shots and everyone else was just kind of like shooting around them. The guided shoots, this is something that I just thought would be fun to try. I had never seen anyone really do anything like this. So I was like, you know what, let's give it a whirl. Basically it was the person guiding. So either Lily or Preston would like direct, pose, and just like explain their thought process while shooting. and the attendees would be there to like listen and also shoot at the same time, but they got time to shoot that couple like after the guided shoot was done, but it was mainly like for these educators to showcase kind of like their process, how they pose, what they look for, all those types of things, to help the attendees learn, you know, directly from someone like posing, directing in person with them. So we split into different groups for Preston's, and we did like 2 groups of 8. 2 groups of 8 for Preston's, and he kind of just like repeated his guided shoot for each of his. But Lily, we actually did the group as a whole was with her, and then she got like a longer time. So in total it was around like 40 minutes of each person like guiding their guided shoot. So let's talk about the schedule. This is another question that I get asked a lot. So the schedule was based around the shoot times essentially. So I really just started with like my ideal shoot times, and then I went from there with making the schedule. I'm so sorry if you guys can hear like a bunch of trash clanging around in the background. There's a dumpster right here, and they are picking up the trash right now. So anywho, I started with my shoot times and I went from there. This week's episode is brought to you by Aftershoot, and I have an exciting announcement that Aftershoot is launching AI retouching, which is now in public beta, and it's free to use now until September 2025. So this adds a powerful finishing layer to the Aftershoot workflow. Now photographers can cull, edit, and retouch all in one tool without extra costs or the need for additional software. So a few key features with their AI retouching. It has skin smoothing for the face and body, which preserves natural texture, blemish and acne removal, flyaway hair cleanup, glasses glare removal, and it's built right into Aftershoot's existing workflow. So I'm super excited to partner with Aftershoot for this podcast. Specifically, the retouching tool is really awesome. Basically what it does is you're able to import your edited JPEGs into Aftershoot, and there's like these little sliders for flyaways and face brightening and eye brightening and all the things, and it does such a good job. It's very, very fast, and something that would take me like a really, really long time in Lightroom, it does in seconds in Aftershoot. So their retouching tool is now available, and like I said, it is free until September. So go give it a try. The link to sign up for Aftershoot is in the description of this episode, and use Cassidy for a percentage off. All right, back to the show. So when it came to making the schedule, I had to know pretty early on what my start times were for these shoots, because I had to book the models like at least like 4 or 5 months in advance. So once I got my shoot time set in place, it really was like, I'm not moving those shoot times, and everything else is just kind of like based around that. So I tried to mix in a lot of like free time, and just allow breaks in between activities. Something that my friend Alex told me, and it was really helpful, was that I didn't need to schedule out like every single second of every single day. Like, it's okay if there's breaks and free time, because people can entertain themselves. They're adults. Like, there's a pool at the villa. They have their rooms. There's different like sitting spaces. Like, there's so many different things that you can do. So like, just give them free time and let them do what they want to do. So I also knew like what events that I wanted to do each day. So then I just scheduled them in. So for example, obviously I know we want breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. I also knew like, oh, I wanted an evening like activity this day, and I want to do like, I want to break in the middle of the afternoon because it's going to be too hot. So those are all things that like I knew beforehand. So you just schedule them in, you know? And for future events though, something that I noted about my workshop was I would probably allow for like more times for the shoots. So like a longer time allotted for the shoots, just in case of any hiccups. I basically scheduled in 15 minutes of like hiccup time for each shoot, but it still like was not long enough. So that's something that I feel like I would do a little differently, was just like a little bit more time schedule in the hiccups for the shoots just in case anything runs long. So I wanted to give you guys like a typical day, like what a typical day would look like for my workshop. So we would start with breakfast in the morning. Then we would do a speaking session. I spoke both times for the different mornings. Then we would do a break and go into lunch usually. Then we would have shoots immediately after lunch. We would break again. And then we would either do shoots again or we would do dinner and then shoots after dinner. And then usually at night, it was like late night editing or like an activity or something like that. And usually at that point, people were just tired. So it was like pretty easy to just like chill or go to bed or whatever. So a big question that I get asked is like, what help did I have for the workshop? Like who was there to help me? So I brought a couple people with me. I brought my mom, I brought my sister, Lexi, I brought Charlie, I brought my dad, and then I brought Preston. Those are all the people that I paid for their plane tickets, brought them there, in exchange for their lovely help. So the first person, my mom, she was one of the main timer assistants for like every single shoot. She was timing, and she was also coordinating. I feel like my mom was also just like a social aspect of it. She was connecting with the attendees and kind of just being like the mom present, just doing like mom things, talking to people. Lexi was one of my other timer assistants. And what I realized is my timer assistants basically like run the shoots. They make sure that things happen. And then Lexi also modeled for me for the solo bride shoot. So that was a big part of what she did. I felt so bad because she was in hair and makeup all morning, and then she had her shoot for like basically 2 hours, and by the end of it she was so tired. Her and my mom went and like got McDonald's, and then she went and like took a nap because she was just so tired. Charlie obviously came with me. He helped a lot with getting content for me, content of the shoots like actually happening. He recorded like me doing like posing and stuff. Like I try to do like different like social media videos with each of my models. He actually shot some of the shoots as well. There were a couple times where I was just like, I feel overwhelmed at the thought of trying to shoot this right now, but could you go and shoot this couple and get some good shots of them, just so I have some photos of the shoot and whatever. He did that for like one or two of the shoots. Most of them I ended up shooting myself. And then Charlie did a lot of coordinating with me, just helping getting things running, making sure things ran smoothly. My dad was only there for the first night of the workshop because of work. He wasn't able to stay for the full 10 days, but he was there for like the first like fun part of the trip, and then the first night of the workshop was his like last day in Italy. So his role honestly was just like socializing. He did like a good amount of coordination. He helped with a lot of prep work. Like he went around to every single room and turned on the AC. Every single room, he put in like the bug zappers in the walls. He went around and like, yeah, did a bunch of stuff just to help. There was like this random like spider web with this gigantic spider. And he like got that down for us. Like, yeah, anyway, my dad was super helpful, and Preston also came. His role mainly was just like doing his guided shoot. Like I wasn't really expecting him to like do all of the help that the rest of my family did, but he directed the guided shoot. He helped a lot with like prep and content as well. And another like interesting thing about the logistics of a workshop is food. Me personally, it's not something I've ever thought twice about, but now that I planned a workshop, I'm like, how do you get people fed? Like, who's making the food? Are you catering all the food? It is so interesting. And I know every single workshop does it differently. I know some people literally are like, we're not figuring out the food. You're in charge of food. We're going to give you a 2-hour break, go find food, and then come back. Like some people, have their mom will come and cook all the food. Some people will do it catered. So for us, we had a chef that the villa recommended. His name was Alessio, and he works at the villa like all the time. And my guess is almost everyone that stays at the villa books him because it's like, there's not really a grocery store nearby. It's a big kitchen. You're on vacation. There's a lot of people to feed. It's like you don't really want to be worrying about that. So Alessio made food for every single meal, and he accommodated allergies as well. So honestly, loved it. Like, it was game changing. So Alessio was definitely the hidden hero in all of this. Beforehand, he actually sent me a menu of everything essentially that he can make. It was split up into some different categories of like sides, and then pastas, and then main dishes, and then desserts. And each meal was like 2 sides, 1 pasta, 1 main dish, and 1 dessert. And then I'd have to let him know like how many people were going to be at each meal, and like what allergies were going to be at each meal, and what time we needed each meal made, which sounds like a lot, but it actually was so fun picking out the menu. It was one of my favorite parts. I got on a flight in like March-ish, and I literally got the menu out and just all flight picked out every single item for the meals, and it was so much fun, like just going through and being like, what sounds like it would taste good together? What do I think everyone would like? So he sent me a menu. We did do like a glass of wine for every dinner, which I was like, if you're in Italy, you want wine with your dinner, so I'm gonna provide some wine. And I paid, for price transparency here, I paid a flat rate for Alessio. His fee was 2,000 euros for the entire week. And then I had to pay for groceries too. So like something like me adding on wine, like I had to pay for all the bottles of wine. And that was kind of like, you know, I have to pay for the ingredients for dessert and all the things. He did include like a waitress for some of the meals. And she basically went around and helped serve the wine and bring out the food and make sure everyone had everything that they needed, which was nice. So let's move into planning the shoots. So basically all of the shoots for me started as like a mood board. They started as just a little dream in the distance. Basically what I was doing with these mood boards was I was gathering like an aesthetic. I was gathering props and locations that I thought I'd want factored in. I was gathering wardrobe ideas and makeup ideas. You know, all of that was being factored into the mood board. I think what's interesting with mood boards is I'm never finding one photo that has everything that I'm trying to do. So like for my horse shoot, it was quite difficult to find any photos on Pinterest with horses, period. So what I was doing was I was kind of like combining a bunch of ideas that I was seeing and being like, okay, this is kind of what I'm picturing. And I think that's what's nice about a mood board. And quite literally the whole point is like, you're not just taking one photo and copying it. You're taking a collection of ideas and different inspirations that you have and collectively creating one vision from it. So each shoot started with a mood board. As I said, I wanted a lot of bridal, since a lot of attendees were wanting to book destination weddings. So I planned a lot of my shoots based on the villa locations, to be honest. So when I first was starting planning my shoots, I went through all the photos of the villa. And even like in booking the villa, I knew I wanted to do a shoot in the gardens, and I knew the library. Those were 2 shoots that I already knew ahead of time that I wanted to do based on the photos of the villa. So I did a shoot in the gardens, a shoot in the courtyard, a shoot in the library, a shoot in one of the painted rooms. They had these cool like indoor outdoor spaces along the edges of the villa that overlooked the gardens, and they were like super old paintings on the walls, super cool. So I knew one of my shoots I wanted to do in one of those rooms. And I also knew pretty early on that I wanted to do a shoot on Lake Garda. So that was something that, you know, when I was figuring out the shoots I wanted to do, that was one of the big factors into like my mood board was, okay, I want to do a shoot on the lake. So let's figure out what dress I want, what boat I want, all those different things. So once I knew my mood board and my locations, then I picked my models and my wardrobe and like my florals and stuff like that. Um, Models were kind of picked based on availability, to be honest, like who lives in Italy that I can book. That was like a big thing, was just like who lives closest. And then wardrobe also was highly dependent on my bridal vendor, my dress vendor. So it really helped my vision having a dress vendor. So the dress vendor was Trouvel and Aisling Bride. Those were the it's all like kind of one girl that owns all of them, but they're different brands within each other. So Trouvel was actually where I got my wedding dress from. I interviewed Gabby on the podcast before, the owner. So even just like seeing the dresses really helped bring my vision to life, because once you have a dress in mind, I feel like it really does kind of dictate the shoot. So for example, I knew I wanted in the gardens, I wanted a really flowy dress so I could get like a couple running through the gardens and get kind of like that movement. And I knew with my horse shoot that I wanted my bride, well, actually, technically it wasn't like supposed to be bridal, but ended up being bridal. I knew for my horse dress, I wanted something that was going to like cascade and flow down the horse if she were to sit on the horse. So little things like that contributed to the vision of the shoot. So let's talk about vendors now, because this is a big part of a workshop, is working with vendors. Honestly, I like to compare it to planning a wedding, because it is very similar to planning a wedding. Especially if you would do like a multi-day wedding event, like this is very similar. So essentially you need the following vendors. You need a venue, you need models, wardrobe, hair, makeup, florals, food, sponsors, and transportation. And I will say, I did not do collabs for any of these other than sponsors. Everyone else, I paid a full price for all of them, their rates that they normally would charge for an event, because it feels icky asking for a collab when you are making money from an event. And some people feel differently about it. And some people, it works. They don't have a huge budget for their workshop. So it's like, I'm going to collab so that I can make this workshop happen. And maybe in the future, I might try to do a little bit more collabing with it all, being like, hey, if I take some extra photos of your florals, could I, get a little bit of a discount? And actually, I'm completely lying about the dresses. That was 100% a collab with Trouvel and Aisling Bride. Forgot about that. They sent me the dresses for free. I got to use them, like definitely a collab on that side, which was absolutely amazing. I don't know what I would have done without a dress collab, because dresses, like if I were to buy a wedding dress, it's actually crazy. So that was definitely nice to do. So moving on from that, how did I book the vendors? I just listed all the vendors that you guys need. I just looked locally, looked on Instagram, went per recommendation. The horses that I booked were one of my followers, it was her brother's horses. So like random little connections like that. So how did I sell my tickets? My tickets were either all-inclusive tickets or day pass tickets. All-inclusives had two different options. You could either do a shared bed or a single bed. The single bed was more expensive. And the all-inclusive tickets included all the meals during the workshop covered, their lodging, and I made sure that the rooms had AC and bathrooms. Obviously, their tickets included being able to shoot all of the shoots and the 2 speaker sessions. The only thing my all-inclusive tickets had to cover was their travel. So transportation to and from the villa, and flights, obviously to Italy. So my day passers, the people that came only for one of the days, they got 1 speaker session. They ended up getting 3 shoots. It originally was only supposed to be 2, but ended up being 3. And then one of those shoots was guided by Lily Red, and then their meals that day were covered. I sold my tickets and did my applications through Honeybook. And basically the way it worked was I accepted waves of applications. And then the people who paid their deposits got their first tickets. If anyone ghosted me, didn't pay their deposit, then someone else would get accepted in their place. And then, so on and so forth until all my tickets were sold. So it took me about 2-3 days to sell out on my tickets. And I had 16 all-inclusive tickets total with 2 day pass tickets. Essentially, I based this number of 16 based on how many rooms were available in the villa. So it was me and Charlie got a room at the villa, and then all the other beds were attendees, basically. So that's kind of how I figured out the numbers on that. Another question that I get is if I funded it myself or if I partnered with sponsors. So I partnered with Aftershoot as a sponsor, and I basically pitched it to them. They sponsored a portion of the cost. It basically was just a set number. It was about 25% of all of my expenses were sponsored by Aftershoot, which we love Aftershoot. They're a sponsor of the pod as well. So that was awesome. And then everything else I just paid up front for. And I just kind of hoped that people would buy tickets. That's the thing with workshops is they are quite a risk for your business. If you pay $30,000 for a villa and then you don't sell enough tickets, then you're kind of in the hole for this villa that you paid a deposit on. So it definitely is a good amount of risk that comes along with it. So another question is like, how did I know how to do everything? Like, I'm explaining to you guys this workshop, but how did I know how to do it? And a big thing I want to say contributed to the planning process was just the fact that I've attended a lot of workshops as just like helper / model / supporting my friends. All my friends that do workshops, I've been to, multiple workshops of my friends at this point. So I've seen what I like, what goes really well. I've seen people set up shoots certain ways, different ways. I've seen different structures for, day of schedules, all stuff like that. I did have a vision for how I wanted it to be structured and how I wanted it to go. I really wanted there to be a sense of community in the meals, and I wanted there to be a good amount of free time. I didn't want it to be super rigid or feel like boot camp. I've never been to a workshop that feels like boot camp, but I just wanted to make sure everyone that attended felt like it was actually relaxing. So I knew that in booking the chef that those meals were going to be a little bit more high end, which was going to be really fun and nice for the community aspect of it. Like the chef would set the table for every single meal, and it would be so cute. Especially for dinner, they went above and beyond with adding florals to the tables and different stuff like that, and just adding cute little decorations. They also had really cute plates and stuff. So anywho, the key with the event and the workshop, I feel was not trying to control every second of the day. Like I mentioned earlier, just allowing people to have the space and time to wander the villa. I even saw a couple of girls walking around together and getting test shots with their flash. It was an hour before they knew they had a shoot in one of the rooms. They were going in and testing their flash. And they couldn't do that if we were constantly scheduling out a million activities. So we're going to talk about what went well and what didn't to kind of wrap up the episode. Well, actually, real quick, let's talk about the cultural and language differences, language challenges. So of course there were cultural differences, language challenges, all of that. We had a good amount of language barriers, especially with the horse vendors. The chef, there wasn't a huge language barrier. He spoke English pretty well, but there were a couple things, just a couple of words he just didn't know in English. For example, the word pescatarian, he didn't know what that meant. So I had to explain it to him. And even one of the first nights, one of my girls had quite a bit of allergies, and she also was allergic to shellfish, but he didn't understand that when I told him that. He didn't understand. There was just a little bit of that language gap. So a lot of the in-person vendors, you know, we had a couple of little language gaps. Everyone spoke and understood English for the most part, but it was, you know, it wasn't like a full, if you were to talk to an American, you know, obviously. So that was just one of the things. Besides that, it was honestly great. Like there were really not too many differences in culture or anything that made anything difficult. The fact that Italians like to do their dinners super late, that was definitely like present, but didn't really affect us because when I would tell Alessio what time we were going to have dinner, we had dinner at that time. It wasn't like he was pushing it to like 9 p.m. because that's just Italian culture. Like, no, he was doing dinner at 6 p.m. if that's what I put on the schedule. So, you know, it was pretty chill. So the pros and cons. And these are going to be interesting. I'm going to be exposing a few things with the workshop. So buckle up. What went well to start? We're starting on a positive note, obviously. The food, as I've mentioned, the food went amazingly well. The vision for the shoots was perfect. Every single shoot ended up being exactly how I had pictured it, which was amazing. What also went well, we're having the smaller shooting groups. Like I mentioned, we split into 2 groups. That went really well. Roommate assignments. This is something that I did only because I like to, I don't know, like I don't like things to be super chaotic, and I didn't want all of my attendees to be getting to the villa and then it just be like, okay, go find a room and put your stuff in a room. Like that to me is stressful because they don't even know what the villa's structure is. They don't know how many rooms there are. They don't know they literally don't know anything. Plus I had 2 girls that were paying for single beds. So I wanted to make sure that like people got their assigned rooms. So essentially I assigned rooms. I did it all randomly. If I did allow my attendees to like put in a roommate request, if they had someone they wanted to room with, I think I had 3 people do that, but everyone else, it was just random. So roommates ended up being great. A lot of the people said that they loved the people that they were roomed with and that it worked really well. That was not really anything on my part. I feel like that was them just like making good connections. It wasn't like me intentionally putting certain people together other than people that requested it. Something else that went really well was the villa. It just was amazing. Like when I walked through the villa, it was breathtaking. If you guys want to see like a full walkthrough of the villa, I did a tour on my Italy vlog that I posted. So go check that out. Villa was seriously amazing. Every room was different. It was exactly how I had envisioned it and more. So it was perfect. Hair and makeup was fabulous. The girl did such a good job. The dresses were so perfect. What I loved about working with Truvel and Aisling Bride was the dresses were modern and trendy enough, but still timeless. You know what I mean? Like they weren't so trendy that it was like, this is going to look weird in a couple of years. They were just like so perfectly in between, trendy enough, but still timeless. And just like they had so many great options to choose from. Something else that went really well was the boat shoot. So I can talk about the boat shoot in a minute because that was like a whole thing to organize. But hold on, I just remembered a con. So let me write this down because, oh gosh, this was a really big con. The boat shoot was great because the boat drivers, essentially rotated so we had 2 different boats, okay, for this boat shoot. One boat had all 16 photographers and one boat had just the couple. And initially I thought that they were just going to take the boats out on the water and be like, okay, you can shoot for an hour. But instead the boat drivers were like driving around and like the boats were rotating. So the boat that had all the photographers on it, they kept rotating in circles and everyone stayed seated. So everyone was sitting along the edge of the boat. Like it literally was like seating on every single edge of the boat. And as they rotated, it just was like, okay, this side of the boat gets a good angle for like 2-3 minutes and then it'll rotate around. And then the next side of the boat has a good angle for 2 to 3 minutes. It worked so well. I didn't feel like anyone was like standing up or trying to get their shot. Like it truly was like so good. Like that went really, really well. The things that didn't go well. So I mentioned that we did the 2 guided shoots. The shoot that I did with Lily, this was not Lily's fault. It was my fault. Lily's shoot was just like too overcrowded. It was the day that we had all the day passers. So there were 18 photographers total. I had them all with Lily for 40 minutes and she was trying to direct and teach all at the same time. Plus it was in the gardens, which the gardens are super narrow and you can't jump over the shrubs. So there's very limited space. It looks open, but it's not. It's like a big maze. So that just didn't go great. I could tell that a few of the photographers were struggling to get shots. I personally didn't even want to shoot at that time because it was like there were so many people. And that was something that like I noted right away and I was like, okay, definitely not doing that again. I could have split up our shoot into 2 different like guided shoots like I did with Preston, and I should have done it because I think it would have created a more intimate space. So that was one thing that didn't go super great. Another thing that I should tell you guys is the horses. So these horses, I want to put in a disclaimer. One of my followers sent me the contact for her brother that had horses locally. I would not have been able to do horses without this contact and without this guy being willing to bring his horses. So like I had no other way to find horses in the area. This was my only way of finding horses and I'm so thankful. Okay. The horses, however, one of them was a perfect, beautiful angel. She was a painted horse. So she was white with like a bunch of black little spots, or sorry, white with a bunch of like brown spots. Gorgeous horse. The other horse was a young stallion. And this I did not know about stallions. I've never seen a stallion before in my life. They are, they're horny. That's the word I'm looking for. And this one was quite turned on for, basically every single photo it was in. And not only that, it just was like so restless. It was like when one of the models was like holding its, like the, oh gosh, I don't even know, the reins or like, you know, the thing on its face. The horse was genuinely like moving its head so much. I've never seen a horse act like that. And I think it's just because it was restless and wanting to run around. And I get it. Like I want to run around too sometimes. It like kept like moving its feet, and like when a horse moves its feet and like kind of like acts a little like antsy with its feet, that's when I'm like, I start to get scared. Like, oh, the horse is going to take off. The horse is going to kick someone. You know, obviously the horse didn't take off. It didn't kick someone. But that was the only thing that like, it's hard to plan for like behavior like that from a horse. So thankfully, because we had the 2 horses, that horse, the one that was a stallion, ended up sitting out for most of it. And then we just used like the painted horse for the other photos. So it was just kind of funny. Like the thought of it all is just humorous. Like just thinking about like how when the attendees first saw this horse, they were all like taking pictures of it and like laughing. It was like it was just funny. It was just one of those things you have to laugh about. Nothing I can do, nothing the owners can do. It just is what it is. Something else that didn't go super great was the transportation to Lake Garda for the boat shoot. Now, the transportation was like a bus that I had booked, like a little charter bus. The bus itself was perfect. They showed up early, on time, brought us exactly where we needed to go. The problem was that the drive to Lake Garda is super windy and a lot of people got car sick. That's not really anything that I can control. It's not anything the bus driver can control. It's not really anything anyone can control. It just is what it is. So people got car sick on the way to the boat shoot, which was unfortunate. The boat shoot almost got canceled. When we were driving to the shoot, me and Charlie drove separately, and then my mom, Lexi, and Preston stayed with the attendees to get on the bus. We were about 30 minutes ahead of the attendees, and it was raining the entire way there. And then I get a call from the boat driver when we're about 20 minutes away, and he's like, hey, so I don't think we can go out tonight. There's a big storm, so I don't think it's going to happen. And I was like, hey, can we make that decision when we get there? We're still 30 minutes away, and then the shoot's not for an hour. Like, can we make that call a little closer to the time? He was like, sure. So we get there, and we look up at the sky. The clouds are definitely above us, and they're dark, and they look heavy, but they are actively moving away from us over this like mountain. And so I'm like, oh, we might be lit right now. And the boat drivers didn't say anything about canceling when I got there. 20 minutes later, the attendees show up, and the boat drivers are like, okay, let's do this. And I'm like, yeah, let's do this. So yeah, that was one thing you really can't plan for is the weather. We had the idea of, if we can't go out in the water for the boat shoot, we're just going to take them around Lake Garda. Lake Garda is a really cute little lake town with lots of like little alleyways and cute buildings. So we're like, worst case scenario, we just shoot the couple around the town. That would still be really cool. But we ended up being able to go on the boat, which the boat shoot was genuinely my dream shoot. And it was perfect. Actually, the most insane images I've ever taken in my life were that boat shoot. I believe I just posted them by the time this episode comes out. And oh boy, they were so good. So other things that didn't go as planned. One of my couples ended up showing up on the wrong day to model. And they were not available for the original day that I had asked them to model. It ended up being slightly their fault, slightly my fault. Just kind of is what it is. I sent them a message with the wrong date in there because I copy and pasted. So like my reminder message to them was something I had copy and pasted from another couple. I didn't switch the date, which was on me. The contract though had said like the correct date. And so that was on them. We ended up making it work because basically the shoot that was going on at that time, they showed up thankfully the time that was perfect for them to just fit in the extra time for the horse shoot. So the horse shoot was scheduled from like 2 to 4 p.m. And this couple was also scheduled for 2 to 4 p.m., but just like the next day. So it ended up working well. And we only had one shoot going on and scheduled that day. So what happened was I just did 2 shoots at once. And when one group would go to the horse couple, the other group would go to the other shoot. And then it worked out and ended up being fine. It just wasn't ideal because for my first shoot ever, I was hoping to only have one shoot going at that time just so we could kind of ease into the process and learn how to do it. But instead, it just was a little chaotic because it was the only time we had 2 shoots going at once. But it ended up working out. The attendees said that they wanted like a Q&A session with each of their like the guided session educators. So with Preston, they wish they could have done a Q&A, and with Lily, they wish they could have done a Q&A. So that was something I just made note of. I did need like 1 or 2 more coordinators because there was a moment where every single person who was there to help me was doing something, and then we still needed more help, and I was like, okay, cool. Other things, the garden couple, we had like a random storm come in at the very end of the shoot. And then I went to like record a video of me shooting the couple, and then my phone died. So that was just something that was just annoying mainly. 2 other things that were cons to all of this. The villa was a little hard to get to, and a couple of people had a hard time calling Ubers to the point where one of my models ended up hitchhiking away from the villa, which that was definitely their decision. We definitely would have driven them, but we didn't know it was at the point where they felt like they needed to hitchhike. But they said it was fun and ended up being fine, but it was like, okay, so that's scary. Hitchhiking is scary. And then we had some of my attendees went to like drop off luggage early, and it was just like a hard process of like getting the Uber and like all the things. So that was just something that was, just a con. It just is what it is. And I also feel like the location of the villa was a little niche, so flights were pretty expensive. The average ticket round trip per person was anywhere from $1,200 to $1,600, at least for my tickets. So, it's just one of those things where it's like, it's Europe in the summer. People are trying to fly there. Flights are going to be expensive, but I feel like maybe there could have been other locations that weren't as expensive. So the question of the day is, would I do it again? And my answer is, why, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It was one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done. It was so fun to see a vision come to life in every single aspect, in the villa, in the shoots, in the community, in the dinners, like all of it come to life. It was really, really cool. So yes, I absolutely would do it again. I love the community that came from it too. Just like the community aspect of it was really cool. Yeah. So many photographers met friends. I met people that I thought were really awesome and I would consider friends. It was just like, yeah, it was awesome. I absolutely would do it again. I am giving myself a couple of months to just chill and hang, and then come the fall months, I'm going to think again to see if I would like to do one again. Because I posted the photos from the workshop, and just like I'm getting comment after comment, DM after DM. When are you hosting another? I want to go to the next one. And it's like, okay, where was this excitement on the front end when I was planning this? Like, now all of a sudden everyone wants to come to my workshop. So we'll see. It was really fun, and I think I would do it again just because I was able to bring my family international and take them on a trip that otherwise we wouldn't have gone on. That aspect of it was one of my absolute favorite parts of it. And traveling with my family, like that's something that I don't know if I'll ever be able to go to Italy with my family again, like with my parents. That was so cool. So yeah, that's it, guys. Thank you so much for listening. If you listened to this podcast and you attended the workshop, thank you so, so much. I could not have done it without you, and I'm so glad that you went. Yeah. That is it for this week's episode. Next week, we are talking about the wedding industry. So stay tuned for that. We're going to talk about all things weddings, shooting weddings, wedding trends, all of that. So I will see you guys next week, and have an amazing rest of your day.